Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle. Hive Fleet Leviathan is here, and once again it is time for a board build, or a terrain build, or a table build. Tyranid are very interesting, and this is the Hive Colony terrain. Well, right now it's just some gray plastic, but by the end of this project, it'll be the most amazing, disgusting, Gigeresque Verbinski alien nest you've ever seen. Step one is going to be getting all of these onto some bases, and not 40K bases, but some terrain, some ground, a little mound of earth for most of these. Some of them I'm gonna leave separate, but some of them I want to build into larger terrain elements. And that is gonna require some foamage. This is our July terrain here at Eons of Battle, the Hive Colony. It prints in many separate pieces that you glue together into these beautiful freestanding terrain elements designed for wargaming, with some areas to stand on, a line of sight blocking, all that goodness, and it is amazing. And with just a little more help, it's going to be even more amazing. Some of these pieces I want to combine into some larger terrain features. I have this lovely jungle map, and I want to completely populate it with all of these lovely Tyranid organisms. By the end of this, it'll be completely populated with all sorts of sickly flora and fauna. Well, I guess more fauna than flora, because the Tyranids are not plants. They are they not plants? These suspicious looking protuberances are the mouths of this hive colony. All of the biomass and food that they need to produce their eggs goes into these mouths, and then it feeds into the underground network that gives all of those nutrients to the eggs to allow them to be turned into new organisms. And don't they look so cute? Like they want to just give you a little kiss. And these lovely little mouths are the air scrubbers. They take in all of the air in the environment and they change it into the Tyranid's preferred environment, which is probably very stinky. Back in the olden days of Warhammer 40K, this would be a finished terrain piece. Just throw a little flock on there and it'd be ready to go. But I have so many plans, and actually one of those plans includes trying to see if I can make these fake plants look good. It is a forest, and I want this hive to be growing kind of out of the forest, sucking the life out of it. And boy, do these plants look lifeless. But with the right paint application, assuming paint will actually stick to these, it might look really, really cool. Now I've got all of these lovely shapes, but they do look pretty fake right now with kind of those clean edges, so I gotta rough them up just a little bit. And that's gonna require some power tools. Sculpt-A-Mold's one of the 8th wonders of the world. I mean, it's just paper, pulp, and plaster, but man, does it work well for terrain. Just add water, it sets up quick. Technical difficulties, please hold. Come on, you can stick. What if I wet the foam first? You know what? It's helping a little. This Sculpt-A-Mold does a lovely job of adding some nice, good-looking earth, but it doesn't want to stick to the foam, but I think I have an easy solution for that. If I just pour some hot glue all over the place, this will give something for the Sculpt-A-Mold to grip onto. There we go. Worked out almost perfectly. Just gotta get off some of this plaster I got on the 3D prints. I have many small, medium, and large styrofoam balls, and so I want to keep this egg thing going. So I'll put a couple of half-submerged eggs here and there. Look me in the eye and tell me those aren't some good-looking balls. Really happy with that. Now it is time to decorate these suckers, and they have smoke and little tentacly eyeball plants. And that's not hyperbole. They are little vines with eyeballs in them. I like the sinister smoke rising out of these things, although this STL set comes with them without the smoke as well. Now for some of these creepy vines. Nice generous helping of hot glue so that I can pose them just how I want them. Another thing I've got is all of these lovely walkways, and so I want to actually use some of these as spikes. Man, that is hard to break. And the reason it's hard to break is because it's using beautiful Soraya resin, the absolute best resin you can buy for 3D printing. If you want to give Soraya resin a try for yourself and experience really strong prints, you can use our link in the description below. I made an extra little pile of eggs, and I think all of these little claws will do a lovely job at protecting them. Nature is so beautiful sometimes. And I've now made this almost impossible to pick up. Now it's time to get a little sandy. My preferred sander holder downer is wood glue. I find wood glue is just a little more tenacious than regular PVA. And I have some of this superfine mulch that might give me a little bit more of a foresty base. I'm not gonna put the sand absolutely everywhere, because some of this stuff I want to actually be like the muscle and biomass of the Tyranids. So I'm gonna keep it kind of to the edges. Once again, my shirt is ruined. I'm pretty sure I lose one article of clothing every single time I build a terrain board. Everything's looking a lot sandier. It is time to make a decision about these plants. I would like to glue them on now, prime them, and then paint them with real paints. But I worry nothing is gonna stick to them. Plastic smell to be expected. I think I just gotta spray them and see what happens. Paint did dry. Actually, seems to be sticking kind of well. I'm gonna say that'll work completely fine. I've always wanted to get into fish tanks. It looks like really, really fun. And actually what I would like to do is almost even nerdier, is I would like to have a Wisconsin fish tank full of like native fish and have it be like a little ecosystem and stuff. And boy, does that not look convincing. Ooh. I've got quite a bit of ammo to throw at these guys, but I don't want the foliage to overpower. You know what though? I don't think I have to worry too much. The plants, they look a little hokey. They look a little bit like pet store plants, but I can see it. I can see it in my head now, what it's all gonna look like painted up. And it's glorious. We really don't have a lot of natural terrain, and now we have a lot of very natural terrain, and it'll all even out once it's primed. And speaking of being primed, they're all primed. I gave them a black primer, and then I sprayed a dark green and a light green on them, and that is gonna give me a huge head start on getting them to match the gaming mat I've got, which once again is this one. Now I just gotta get a few more colors on there to make them match perfectly. This gaming mat has some orangey browns and is much lighter greens going on. I started by making myself an orangey wash with a few drops of Flow Aid. This is really watery and I applied it in a few coats to the board to get it as bright as I wanted it. Then I airbrushed a light green on top, dusting it in patches to replicate the uneven surface of the battle mat, and then a dry brushing a lime green, catching on all the sand, and now it was looking properly jungly. And speaking of bright red balls, I sprayed red on the alien eggs, sphincters, and the flesh walls. This will be my base coat, and it'll tie it in with my Tyranid army, which is Behemoth. Wow, that looks pretty sinister. Oh, and it only gets worse from here. I highlighted all the Tyranid flesh with a beige color. This through the airbrush worked amazingly, catching on all the uneven natural textures made for very realistic alien flesh. And I won't need to highlight with a paintbrush. I left a good amount of the red showing underneath, and then to make the wrinkles, veins, and folds even more pronounced, I dry brushed everything, taking special care on the bones as these should be brighter than the flesh. I tackle the teeth of these buildings, dry brushing them white to edge highlight the details, and then a coat of blue speed paint to darken them. Those talons are there to poke anything that gets a little too close to the eggs. Painting veins on these eggs made this project so much better. I used watery paint and then a thin, long paintbrush and dragged the brush across the balls in a wiggly pattern. After that, it was time to gloss the balls. I want them to look nice and sticky for the next part. Oohoo glue, or as I call it, ooh glue. This is a rubber cement, and as it dries, you can stretch it out to make nasty goo strings. Look at those sticky balls. Ugh, I absolutely love them. I painted this sucker up live, and actually the veins were a viewer suggestion. Genius. By the way, we live stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Central Time. Come hang out to watch some painting happen and to talk all things nerdy. And speaking of nerdy, now it's time for those buttholes. This mouth terrain is pretty gross, but I can make it grosser. I took a big old paintbrush and some beige paint and I highlighted the center of each mouth, getting brighter towards the throat. Then I could have picked out all the teeth, but I know a better way. These fangs are so close together that a dry brushing will paint them all beautifully and in only a few seconds. Now for the flesh these things are munching on, I used some Blood for the Blood God technical paint. When ripper swarms eat enough food, they come and feed themselves to these mouths, giving the hive fleet every scrap of biomatter. Ah, it's so lovely and completely disgusting, and that is a line I love to live on. Everything desperately needs a wash. Now, I don't know if this one little bottle's gonna do it. And it's empty anyway, so I actually don't have the option to try. But I do have lots of this. I have been dying to try out some of the Army Painter Dip Wash. Is this a terrible idea? Probably, but let's see what happens. This stuff is really different. It needs to be stirred up before use, and as the name would imply, you are meant to dip minis into it and then flick off the excess. I can't do either of those things with this terrain, so I'm gonna brush it on and then wipe it away with some paper towel. So far so good, it behaves like a normal wash, just a little thicker. And this is the end of this paintbrush. The real test will be to see if it dries overnight, or else I'll have a real problem. It's been about 8 hours and the wash is pretty tacky, but that makes sense. It should take about 2 days to dry. It is plenty dry enough to keep working though, and I like it. I think it looks pretty good. It is very glossy, which actually probably works really well for sickly, fleshy stuff like this. Now the next step is going to be all of the carapaces, and because my hive fleet is behemoth, it's gonna be dark blue. Spraying this terrain blue was a little challenging. I had to hold back some of the fish tank plants so they didn't get blue on them. But the airbrush was a massive help with this. The blue, red, and green make a color triad. I really lucked into a strong color combination with this project. A highlighting of a lighter blue gave the carapaces some more definition and shape, and then it was time for dry brushing. This is where these pieces came to life, literally, because they're alive. This light blue caught on all the edges and shapes in the carapace. Next was the smoke. I like to think the Tyranids have something of a living combustion engine as part of their alien biology, and this sinister green smoke is a byproduct. And a dry brushing of white and then Army Painter Ghillie Doo through the airbrush did exactly what I wanted. It's so beautiful. And just like the ending of any miniature, it's time for some grass tufts on the bases. It's hard to do a proper jungle because jungles are just piles upon piles of trees, plants, ferns, shrubs, and rocks, and it's hard to replicate that convincingly in miniatures. I'm using my tufts to fill in some of the bigger open areas so my jungle looks a little bit wilder. That is it, last grass tuft applied. Now the only thing left to do is to get this on a gaming mat and get some Tyranids around it. It's so beautiful. And disgusting, and that is just how the Tyranid should be. It's so sickly and gross, and I finally have terrain that matches one of my armies. I've had Gothic ruins before, but everything goes with Gothic ruins. This is Hive Fleet Behemoth terrain with my Hive Fleet Behemoth on top of it, and I think playing on a board that matches my army will give me a leg up in my games. I gotta be honest, I don't win a lot of games of Warhammer, but I think having everything match, have Hive Fleet Behemoth on their board is gonna give me a leg up. And once again, this terrain is going to be available to our Patreon supporters at the EOB terrain tier for the month of July, and it can be found on our My Mini Factory tribes. It's so sickly and gross, and I think my favorite thing are these humongous walls. They block line of sight, models can get up on there and snipe. I gotta find a good Tyranid model that can be my sniper. Maybe these zone tropes will do it. I'm super excited to get this ready to go for 10th edition. I've already played a game on this board. It was against Sean. I was using my Necrons and he absolutely wiped the floor with me, but now I've got my Tyranids and I am ready to go. Thanks for watching.